Hello, I'm Pam Hoffman, Everyday Spacer.
I'm Jeff Miller, 2049 Outfitters.
We're doing good tonight. At Everyday Spacer, we show regular folks how to personally and directly participate in space exploration, science, and astronomy. We're here on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, 12 midnight Eastern Time, and 2 p.m. on Saturday in Queensland, Australia. Hi, Cliff. He already left us a comment. We're broadcasting live from Thousand Oaks, California. Last week, right before signing off, I asked, does anyone know where Edwin Eugene Aldrin Jr. got the nickname Buzz? I found out from reading his book that, well, let's see. Here's my question. Did you figure out how Edwin Eugene Aldrin got his nickname Buzz? As a junior, the family called him Brother, only his little sister could not say it correctly and called him Buzzer, which was shortened to Buzz, and that's how we know him all today as Buzz Aldrin. We got some comments, I see.
Yep. Hey, Scott.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Hey, Shreya.
Welcome back. All right. Excellent. Thanks so much for being here. Tonight's episode will be another profile. We're going to look into Michael Collins. We'll be back in 8.3 seconds.
Hey, Scott.
We almost missed you.
Almost missed you too.
We're not talking about target practice, fellows. All right, Michael Collins, an Apollo 11 astronaut, doesn't get a lot of attention. He was an American astronaut who flew the Apollo 11 command module, Columbia, around the moon in 1969, while his crewmates, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, made the first crewed landing on the surface of the moon. He was also a test pilot and a major general in the U.S. Air Force Reserves. Welcome back, Jeff. Tell us what you learned about Michael Collins this week.
Well, first I'm going to say that went to Michigan. As always, I brought back something other than just my mom.
And shared.
Then I gave it to Pam. So yes, I'm coming off of it. She's coming on to it. So
thank you very much.
So so if I'm coughing a bit, that's where we are. Okay.
You know you're human when. Mm-hmm. One day that'll be a thing.
Yeah, it used to be the only disease that I got made me burst into flame when I went into the sun.
What?
Okay.
Let's talk about Michael Collins. Oh, I should share, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, okay. Here we go. Hang on. There it is.
Okay.
There he is.
First things first. Lots of photos of Michael Collins. Lots of the same photo, but there's some stuff in here. This is in his older years. This is when he was a major general. He basically went into the reserve after getting out of the Air Force, and just through longevity, made it up to major general. And that's there he is, some idiot. That can't be Michael Collins, nor was he the one who took that photo.
No.
Most of these other photos are Michael Collins or photos he took, but there are some here that I don't think we've seen before, like this black and white one. Mm-hmm. This one, probably in the CSM, I don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. But, a bunch of, these two are obviously posed. This one, probably not. And there's this crew. I just like some of these photos that we haven't had a chance to see before. And we just recently lost Michael Collins in 2021.
He was up there, though.
Yeah, that leaves Buzz as the...
Buzz is the last one of the Apollo 11 crew.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to... This is from his test pilot days.
Neat.
This is what probably got him into the astronaut program. Because he had more hours, I think, than anyone else on that crew.
Oh, yeah, you were reading that to me earlier.
Yeah, so here we go. Just, you know, basically just Google Michael Collins photos, Michael Collins astronaut photos, because there's another Michael Collins out there.
Oh,
Um,
good to know.
and so, of the various sites, Wikipedia seems to have the most information on him, but there's a lot of other sites out there, and I'll just run through them. I'll spend most of my time on the wiki simply because it's the most comprehensive. The others have segments of what's on the wiki, but not the whole thing. So,
okay.
NASA, of course, has him. Has some photos that we haven't seen before in the other search.
Welcome, Dawn.
Hey, Don.
Good to have you here. And Scott says, I hope Buzz lives long enough to see the next moon landing.
Me too, but it's
gonna be a while though.
Gonna be about 3 years.
Yeah, and he's quite up there.
Because the next one is going to be basically a moon pass around.
Yeah, right. All
so, here's New Mexico Space Museum, which is a really good source of stuff. And it talks about his early life. Interestingly, one of the few astronauts that was not born in the U.S.
Oh, he wasn't.
He was born in Rome, Italy, because his father was a major general in the U.S. Army. He grew up in Italy, Oklahoma, New York, and Puerto Rico, because of course his dad traveled. Yeah.
That's pretty typical for a military family. I think it's every 3 years they moved. Oh, Janie's here with us. Welcome, Janie.
Yeah, Janie.
See another profile. Yeah, thanks for sharing your research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he joined after leaving West Point. So we know he's an officer. Michael Collins entered the Air Force, in part to avoid the appearance of nepotism. As his uncle, listen to how many people are in the Army here. His uncle was chief of staff of the Army at the time. This one doesn't. You see, that's why the wiki's better. He had so many family members in the Army, and I'll get back to that then. National Air and Space Museum.
Oh, neat.
Which he actually was in charge of getting done.
Oh, right. You were telling me about that too.
Yeah, so we'll cover that.
He was instrumental in getting the...
Yeah, they don't really talk about that, but here is a really neat video.
Oh.
And so National Air and Space Museum, Michael Collins, just look that up. And you'll see this video. It's him and Buzz being interviewed in a series called In Conversation, but that the Smithsonian puts together. So I would encourage anyone to do this. In fact, I am going to share this link just to make it easy for people.
Yeah, that's good.
Because typing into Google is hard.
All right, here it comes. And it should be a clickable link once you add it to the comments, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. Hopefully you can see that and use that. And I want to listen to that too, but we didn't do that one.
No.
We've been dealing with you coming back and
then us being sick one after the other.
Yeah.
So this is also found on the site that learn more about Michael Collins. Really, if you have time for this, if you don't have time for this nonsense, read the wiki. It's all there. Britannica has a biography of him. Again, it covers more than some, but...
Thanks, Cliff. He says, good to see you again, Jeff. You sound better.
Yeah. I definitely sound better than before you heard me, but of course I'm on Robitussin right now. And a cough drop, so,
Yay.
Good. Yeah.
And here we are at the wiki page. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And now I just want to show you.
You'll have the list there of all the...
Look at this.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, lots of great information.
Yeah. So, it tells us what we already know. He flew with Neil and Buzz
I know his father was, yeah.
His father was
That was the Army.
well, his father, but he was a test pilot and a major general in the U.S. Air Force Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Born Italy, he flew F-86 Sabre fighters,
Neat.
which were some of the first jets that we had.
Okay.
A little bit less likely to blow up on you than the German ones that they
18.
used in World War II.
Okay.
But yeah, it was
For
not.
Halloween.
He was part of the third group of 14 astronauts.
Mm.
Look at how young everyone looks there.
Yeah.
Collins flew in space twice. His first space flight was on Gemini 10, or Gemini 10, depends on who says it. I basically became British there for a moment. In which he and command pilot John Young performed orbital rendezvous with 2 spacecraft and undertook 2 EVAs. They actually, on that flight, they talk about it later, did more missions, did more experiments than most other. I think there was only one flight that did more, and they were up there for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
He was up there for 3 days. Busy bee there.
Yeah, most of the astronauts had a really busy schedule.
Yep.
Every single time they went.
Mm-hmm. I think the 2 weeks was just an endurance test to see if they could do it.
Mm-hmm.
He became one of 24 people to fly to the moon, which he orbited 30 times. He was the 4th person and 3rd American to perform a spacewalk, and the 1st person to perform more than one spacewalk. And after Young, who flew the command module on Apollo 10, the 2nd person to orbit the moon alone. After retiring from NASA in 1970, he took a job in the Department of State as Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs. A year later, he became the director of the National Air and Space Museum and held this position until 1978. They go into it a little bit later, but the National Air and Space Museum was an idea at that point. They hadn't actually built it.
Okay.
And he was responsible for getting it built.
So he was the director before it was even
built. Basically, they authorized it to be created, but never authorized a budget to make it.
Oh.
So he was stumping, Congress for money.
So fundraising. I guess his job as the director before it was built was to do the fundraising for it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
To twist some arms and get
that's quite a legacy.
Mm-hmm. And then he stepped down in 78, he stepped down to become undersecretary of the Smithsonian Institution.
Mm.
And then he became vice president of LTV Aerospace.
I don't know what that is.
Me neither.
Okay.
Lufthansa Corporation.
Okay.
He resigned in 1985 to start his own consulting firm.
Oh.
He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1969 and Congressional Gold Medal in 2011, as were the other 2 members of the Apollo 11 flight.
Okay.
His early life, basically, he took his first plane ride in Puerto Rico aboard a Grumman Woodgen, which I don't know what that one is. I know Grumman, but I don't know that model of airplane. And the pilot allowed him to fly it for a portion of the flight.
Oh, cool. Yeah, flying's pretty easy. Taking off and landing are the hard parts.
Yeah. He wanted to fly again, but since World War II started soon after, he was unable.
Too young, right?
Yeah. He studied for 2 years in Puerto Rico. After the U.S. started and entered World War II, family moved to Washington, D.C., and his mother wanted him to enter the diplomatic service, but he decided to follow his father, 2 uncles, brother, and cousin into the armed services.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. So he received an appointment to United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, from which his father and older brother had graduated in 1907 and 1939.
So they're sort of equal opportunity West Point. They feed into any of the armed services. Okay. Don't think I really knew that.
Yeah. He finished 185th out of 527 cadets. So top 25, but not outstanding. But that included future fellow astronaut Ed White. He joined the U.S. Air Force both by the wonder of what the next 50 years might bring in aerospace and to avoid accusations of nepotism. Had he joined the Army, where his brother was already a colonel, his father had reached the rank of Major General, his uncle, General J. Lawson Collins, was the Chief of Staff of the United States Army.
Jeez.
So that was good. Now, unfortunately, promotion was slower in the Air Force than in the Army due to a large number of young officers who had been commissioned and promoted during World War II. Because to be a pilot, you had to be an officer. Therefore, there were a whole bunch of second lieutenants. So, everyone and their brother was an officer. But second lieutenant is kind of the lowest position.
I showed a comment from Cliff. He was a very practical man, very logical.
He was.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff about him. I mean, if you get that close to the moon and not go, you might be upset and kind of. But no, he was.
No,
he was very practical about it.
His whole attitude about that was there were 3 people needed to do that, and all 3 were needed. He was 1/3 of what made it happen.
Yeah, fascinating. He was not the least bit resentful about not actually stepping on the moon.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Also, I think he was a bit of a loner, and the fact that when he was on the far side of the moon, he was farther away from every other person in the world than anyone's ever been before. So I think that was
a true introvert. Oh, finally some peace and quiet from everything. I can relate.
Yeah. So he was awarded his wings.
Bit like Mr. Spock. Okay. Oh, the logical part. Yeah. Thanks, Cliff.
Yeah.
And remember, Cliff's got
a delay.
A bit of a delay, because he's in Australia, at the other side of the whole world.
Yeah. Now, he was chosen for advanced day fighter training at Nellis Air Force Base, flying F-86 Sabres. The training was dangerous, and 11 people were killed in accidents during the 22 weeks he was there. This was followed by an assignment to the fighter bomber wing at George Air Force Base, where I learned ground attack and nuclear weapons delivery techniques in the F-86. So it was a fighter that could carry a bomb. Then he moved to the Chambly, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but Air Force Base in France in 1954, and won first prize in 56 gunnery competition.
Wow.
During NATO exercise that year, he was forced to eject from an F-86 near Chamonix, whatever, after a fire started after the cockpit. Yeah, this was how safe those airplanes were. They would just catch on fire.
Okay.
So, Collins met his future wife, Patricia Mary Finnegan, from Boston, Massachusetts, and in an officer's mess. She majored in English and was a social worker, dealing mainly with single mothers. To see more of the world, she was working for the Air Force Service Club. After getting engaged, they had to overcome a difference in religion. Collins was nominally Episcopalian, which must mean that he was probably non-practicing, while Finnegan came from a staunchly Roman Catholic family.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a match made in heaven. Or not, depending on who you ask. After seeking permission to marry from Finnegan's father and delaying their wedding when Collins was redeployed to West Germany during the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, they married in 57. They had a daughter, actress Kate Collins. I don't know who that is, but
I'll show our picture. If you're, yeah. See.
No,
they don't have the picture.
Oh, but she was.
Oh, soap opera. That's
soap
why we
opera,
don't know.
All My Children.
We know science fiction, not soap
92.
opera.
Ah,
that's a long run.
My mom used to watch that.
Oh, okay.
I probably have seen her because I was, young enough to basically not have control of the channel on the summers when that would run during the day. A second daughter, Anne, in 1961, and a son, Michael, in 1963.
So that's close to my age.
Yeah. In late 57, he attended an aircraft maintenance officer course. And he would later describe the school as dismal in his autobiography. Boring classwork, scarce flying time, which is what he really wanted.
Oh, so Scott comes in with, this guy's job was so important, but I rarely heard anyone talking about him.
That's why I'm doing this, Scott.
Right, yeah.
Is that, you saw me scroll down the wiki. There's so much about him. I don't know if my throat will hold out to tell all of it, but I'll do what I can. You
could put that link in there too, actually.
Yeah.
Give her voice a rest briefly. So watch for the link. He's gonna put that in, and should be clickable. When we grab them like this and add them, they tend to work out. There. Okay, it's going.
Yeah, and like I said, there are other sites that have stuff on them. Some of it's good, but none of it's as complete as this.
I think I'd like to read the autobiography. That's how I learned things, like how Buzz got his nickname. I read one of Buzz Aldrin's books.
Yeah.
It's a great way to learn about people, and especially the ones you admire.
Yeah. So the detachment trained mechanics on the servicing of new aircraft and pilots how to fly them, which was important for later on. He later became the first commander of the field training detachment back at Nellis Air Force Base, which was a similar kind of unit, except that the students traveled to him. Collins's mobile training detachment posting allowed him to accumulate over 1,500 flying hours. Now he was saying that flying time was scarce, so he must have gotten every hour he could.
Well, if you like to fly, that's what you do.
Yeah, which was the minimum required for admission into U.S. Air Force Experimental Flight Test Pilot School at Edwards.
Oh, Edwards, that's north of here.
His application was successful, and in 1960, became a member of Class 60C, which included Frank Borman, Jim Irwin, and Tom Stafford, who later became astronauts.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have a comment too. Janie says, I appreciate our Everyday Spacer Academy. Fabulous learning. Professors Miller and Hoffman. Thanks, Jamie. Hey, we have as much fun doing this because, of course, we learn every single time we do this kind of research. New stuff that's going on and about the people. And there's a lot of this I didn't know anything about at all. Yeah,
so, high performance F-86 Sabre, B-57 Canberra, and T-33 Shooting Star, and the F-104 Starfighter, which was probably one of the most advanced jets at the time, fighter jets. Collins was a heavy smoker, but quit in 1962 after suffering a particularly bad hangover. The next day, he spent what he described as the worst 4 hours of his life in the co-pilot seat of a B-52 Stratofortress while going through the initial stages of nicotine withdrawal.
So I don't quite get the relationship between the hangover and not smoking. I mean, it seems like they're different things.
I think he was too miserable to smoke. And by the time he'd sobered up enough to sit in the co-pilot
he was done, huh?
Yeah. Well, and then he was in nicotine withdrawal.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And I guess
It's a funny statement, you
Yeah.
know. After suffering a particularly bad hangover. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So apparently he decided that he didn't need to do that ever again.
Yeah.
Which is good because I don't think he would have made it into the astronaut program if he was a smoker.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because that's what you need.
Yeah, they were
in space.
picking. They were picking
Yeah.
very carefully. The right stuff. It's
Yeah.
They wanted the people that were healthy and
Yeah. Because
could
of course
handle a lot of
you
stuff.
couldn't light up on the vehicle. And you didn't want someone going through withdrawal on the vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
And you didn't really want someone with lung damage on the vehicle. So the inspiration for Collins in his decision to become an astronaut was the Mercury Atlas 6 flight of John Glenn on February 20th, 1962.
He goes, tough way to quit. Glad he made the change. Yes.
Yes.
I guess gives you motivation.
His family was probably glad too.
Yep.
The thought of being able to circle the Earth in 90 minutes was what did it for him. He applied for the second group of astronauts that year. To raise the number of Air Force pilots selected, the Air Force sent their best applicants to a charm school. Medical and psychiatric examinations at Brooks Air Force Base, Texas, and interviews in Houston followed. Mid-September, he found out that he had not been accepted.
That was the second one. He got into the third group.
Right, yeah. It was a blow even. Oh, you're giving it away.
No, you already talked about it. That's how I knew.
I know. I'm surprised you remembered.
I did. I'm not that sick.
I'm surprised you remembered. Okay. It was a blow even though he did not expect to be selected. Collins rated the second group of 9 better than the Mercury 7 who preceded them, or the 5 groups that followed, including his own. So he thought that he just lost out due to really high competition.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That year, the U.S. Experimental Test Pilot School became the Air Force Aerospace Research Pilot School, as the Air Force tried to enter into space research through the X-15 and the X-20 programs. Collins applied for a new postgraduate course offered into the basics of spaceflight. He was accepted into the third class October 22nd, 1962. Other students of his 11-member class included 3 future astronauts: Charles Bassett, Edward Givens, and Joe Engle. Along with class work, he flew up to 90,000 feet, 27 meters for those of you everywhere else in the world, in F-104 starfighters. They passed through the top of their arc. They would experience brief periods of weightlessness. Upon finishing this course, he returned to fighter operations. At the start of June, NASA was once again called for astronauts, and he went through the same process with the first application, though he did not take the psychiatric evaluation. He was at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas on October 14 when Deke Slayton, the chief astronaut officer, here's Deke, I think, yep, there's Deke, at NASA, called him, asked if he was still interested in becoming an astronaut. Charles Bassett was also accepted. By this time, Collins had flown over 3,000 hours, of which 2,700 were in jet aircraft.
Nice.
So he had a lot of hours under his belt. Compared to the first 2 groups of astronauts, the third group of 14 astronauts, which included Collins, was younger with an average of 31, with an average age of 31. The first 2 groups averaged 34 and 32 at their time of selection, and was better educated with an average of 5.6 years of tertiary education. But they had fewer flying hours, 2,300 on average compared to 3,500 and 2,800 for the first 2 groups. And only 8 of the 14 were test pilots. But of course, he had far more hours than that. Of the 30 astronauts selected in the first 3 groups, Only Collins and his third group colleague, William Anders, were born outside the United States. And Collins was the only one with an older brother. All of the rest were eldest sons of their families.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. Training began with a 240-hour course on basic space flight. 48 hours of this was devoted to geology, something Collins did not readily understand, in which he never became very interested. Probably another reason why he didn't care about landing on the moon. At the end, Alan Shepard, the chief of the astronaut office, asked the 14 to rank their fellow astronauts in order they would want to fly with them in space. Collins picked David Scott for the number 1 position. After basic training, the third group was assigned specializations. Collins received his first choice, pressure suit and extravehicular activities, or EVAs, also known as spacewalks. So he basically set himself up to do the first 2 spacewalks that anyone had done back to back.
Nice.
You know, his job was to monitor development and act as a liaison between the astronaut office and contractors. So I would imagine, although they don't say it, that he was involved in building the suit and/or the low-power rockets that they used to propel the suit.
Oh, okay.
Basically, liquid nitrogen. He was disturbed by the secretive planning of Ed White's EVA on Gemini 4 because he was not involved despite being the person with the greatest knowledge of the subject.
Oh.
Maybe why he wasn't involved. But I don't know. You know, there was some politicking going on too. So, received his first crew assignment, backup pilot for Gemini 7, with his classmate, his West Point classmate Ed White, named as backup mission commander. Collins was the first of the 14 to receive a crew assignment, but the first to fly was Scott on Gemini 8, and Charles Bassett assigned to Gemini 9. Under the system of crew rotation established by Slayton, being the backup crew of 7 set Collins up to pilot Gemini 10. Gemini 7 was commanded by Borman, who Collins knew from their days in Edwards, and Jim Lovell as a pilot. Collins made a point to provide a daily briefing to their wives, Susan Borman and Marilyn Lovell, on the progress of the 2-week Gemini 7 mission. Yeah,
Janie goes, politics in space, oh my.
Yep.
Or you got people. I think it kind of comes with.
Yep. After the successful completion of Gemini 7 on January 24th, 1966, Collins was assigned to the prime crew of Gemini 10, but with John Young as mission commander, as White moved on to the Apollo program. Jim Lovell and Buzz Aldrin were designated as the backup commander and pilot, respectively. The arrangements were disturbed in February 28 by the deaths of the Gemini 9 crew, Charles Bassett and Elliot C., in the 1966 NASA T-38 crash. They were replaced on Gemini 9 by their backups, Stafford and Gene Cernan. Cernan was
we know those names.
Yep. Cernan was the second of the 14 to fly into space. Lovell and Aldrin became their backups, and Alan Bean, also a name that we know, and C.C. Williams took their place as Gemini 10 backup crew.
We got some. That's an interesting question, Shreyan. Isn't space international water, so to speak?
No,
it's not. Okay.
No, because it's not water. There is actually nothing but a space treaty saying that we won't weaponize space, but so far most of the big players haven't signed it. It's just there, unsigned. So,
interesting.
Basically, everyone seems to obey it mostly, except when they don't. Like when China blew up something and when India blew up something, testing weapons. Yeah. And scattered space debris.
Well, that'd be a good topic to look into, though, right?
Yeah.
And thank you for that.
Hey, maybe talk to Joshua Carlson about it.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah.
Because he knows space law and space politics.
Yeah, more because there's another comment.
Yeah, let's.
Okay. Cliff says, not much talk about him, but I bet Neil and Buzz were happy to see him again.
Yes.
Yes.
And he was very happy to see them. He did not want to come back alone.
Oh.
You know, that was one of his biggest fears.
Well, that's a successful mission to bring everybody
right
back home. We were very careful about that in the States. I don't think the Russians took as much care about.
Right. But he didn't want to be that guy.
Oh.
You know,
came back alone.
Yeah. Because you never get over that. No one would want to fly with you. I mean,
well, I don't think he actually went. He did any more space flights after.
He didn't, but that was a decision of his. It comes up later, but basically he said that he was asked to be put on the rotation for, backup for Apollo 14 and, pilot for, commander for 17. But he said that if 11 succeeds, he's not going to do it. Because his whole thing was to put people on the moon to keep John Kennedy's promise.
Right.
And he did.
So
and then he was done.
Good.
He did his thing, yeah.
Pretty interesting because
yeah.
You think about these guys as being really into it, but
he was more goal oriented. That was his goal, was to help make it happen. And that's, I think, part of why he didn't mind not being the one to go onto the surface, because he was part of making it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
You got more for us over there?
Oh, lots. I don't know how much I can get through.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the slider is pretty far up at the top.
Yeah, I'm only at the 1/4 mark here. So we're going to go through a bunch of this. Basically, definitely look at this. You'll find a lot of stuff on it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Apollo 10, 2 EVAs, although the first one, he didn't actually leave the spacecraft. He stood in the doorway using an ultraviolet camera to take pictures. And took pictures. Let's see, where was it? He took ultraviolet photos of a plate they brought with them. They were used to compare to photos taken in space with those taken in the laboratory.
Oh, interesting.
To see if being in space did anything to the camera. If they have a known quantity, when they compare them, then they can compensate for that. So that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But the EVA started on the dark side of the Earth, so Collins could take photos of the Milky Way. Collins and Young's eyes began to water, forcing them to end an early end to the EVA. Lithium hydroxide, which was normally used to remove exhaled carbon dioxide from the cabin, had accidentally been fed into the astronaut spacesuits.
Jeez.
The compressor causing the problem was switched off, and a high oxygen flow was used to purge the environmental control systems. Prior to a second EVA, they also did 2 dockings. So they docked with the Agena 10. The Agena 10 spacecraft was jettisoned. Young positioned the capsule close enough to Agena 8 for Collins to get to it while attached to his 48-foot, 15-meter umbilical. Collins became the first person to perform 2 spacewalks in the same mission. He found it took much longer to complete tasks than he expected, which all of them then commented on. Something Cernan also experienced during his spacewalk on Gemini 9. He removed a micrometeorite experiment from the exterior of the spacecraft and configured his nitrogen maneuver thruster. Collins had difficulty re-entering the spacecraft and needed Young to pull him back from within his umbilical. I think he was meant to go back to the Agena 8 because they cut short their mission due to fuel concerns. So he wasn't able to actually retrieve that micrometeorite experiment that he disconnected in it, so it floated off. So yeah, because they were supposed to dock with it, not just be near it. But that was canceled. Collins was then assigned to backup crew for the second crewed Apollo flight with Borman commander Stafford and as a command module pilot, and Collins as the lunar module pilot, along with learning how the Apollo command and service module and the Apollo lunar module, which at the time they were calling a LEM, not LM, because people got tired of them calling it. Yep. And delete those. But it was decided to cancel the Apollo 2 flight, so it was just a repeat of the Apollo 1 flight that they had planned. Stafford was given his own crew, and Andrews was assigned to Borman's crew. Slayton had decided an Apollo mission commander should be an experienced astronaut who has already flown a mission, and that on flights with an LM, the CMP should also have some spaceflight experience, something Andrews did not yet have. And since the CMP would have to fly the command module alone, Collins therefore moved to the CMP position on Apollo 8 prime crew, and Andrews became the LMP, which is the lunar pilot. The practice became that the CMP would be the next most senior member of the crew, and that they would go on to command later Apollo flights. They were on a staff meeting, which were always held on Fridays in the astronaut office, when Collins found himself January 27th, 1967. Don Gregory answered the red phone to be informed that there had been a fire on Apollo 1 command module, and that the three astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, were dead. When the enormity of the situation was ascertained, it fell on Collins to go to the Chaffee household and inform Martha Chaffee that her husband had died. The astronaut office had learned to be proactive, informing astronauts' families of a death quickly because of the death of Theodore Freeman in an aircraft crash in 1964, when a newspaper reporter was the first to his house.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Hearing it in the news, not good.
Yeah. They were sent by NASA to the Paris Air Show in 1967, where they met cosmonauts Pavel Belyayev, I think, and Konstantin Feodosivkov. I think I've heard of Konstantin, but I hadn't heard of Pavel, whom they drank vodka in the Soviets' Tupolev Tu-134. Collins found it interesting that some cosmonauts were doing helicopter training like their American counterparts, which he was doing because it was what they thought was the most relatable to lunar module landing.
Oh, okay.
And he actually had a lot of helicopter training. He had a lot of training in the lunar module. And Belyayev said that he hoped to make a circumlunar flight soon. The astronauts' wives had accompanied them on the trip, and Collins and his wife Pat were compelled by NASA and their friends to travel to Metz, where they had been married 10 years before. There they found a third wedding ceremony had been arranged for them 10 years previously. They had already had a civil and religious ceremonies, so they could renew their vows.
Aw, that's neat.
And get PR.
Okay.
That was why NASA wanted him to do it. During 1968, Collins noticed his legs were not working as they should. First during handball games and then walking downstairs. His knee would almost give way, and his left leg had unusual sensations when in hot or cold water. Reluctantly, he sought medical advice, and the diagnosis was a cervical disc herniation, requiring 2 vertebrae to be fused. The surgery was performed, and the planned recuperation time was 3 to 6 months. Collins spent 3 months in a neck brace. As a result, he was removed from the prime crew of Apollo 9, and his backup, Jim Lovell, replaced him as CMP.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I was in a neck for a while.
Yeah. When Apollo 8 mission was changed from a CSM LM mission in high Earth orbit to a CSM only flight around the moon, both prime and backup crews for Apollo 8 and 9 were swapped places because they had different experiences. So since Apollo 9 was supposed to do that flight, all of the training was for it. So they just swapped the crews. I don't know why they didn't. I don't know why they did that, but hey.
Yeah, medical stuff can definitely ground an astronaut. So
yeah.
That was his reluctance, I expect.
Yeah. The successful completion of the first crewed circumlunar flight was followed by the announcement of the Apollo 11 crew of Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. At the time, in January 1969, it was uncertain that this would be a lunar landing mission. This depended on the success of Apollo 9 and Apollo 10 testing the lunar module. When they go to Apollo 11, I'm going to basically go through a lot of this. Oh, except because we all know Apollo 11, but basically they landed, 2 of them landed on the moon. He stayed up there.
Right.
That's Apollo 11, but it was the first steps on the moon. The mission patch for Apollo 11 was a creation of Collins.
I like this a lot.
Jim.
It's almost a collaborative effort, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, he kind of put it together. Jim Lovell, the backup commander, mentioned the idea of eagles, a symbol of the United States. Collins liked the idea and found a painting by artist Walter A. Weber in a National Geographic Society book, Water, Prey, and Game Birds of North America. Traced it and added the lunar surface below and Earth in the background. The idea of an olive branch, a symbol of peace, came from a computer expert at the simulators. The call sign Columbia for the command service module came from Julian Scheer. There he is. The NASA assistant administrator for public affairs. He mentioned the idea to Collins in a conversation, and Collins could not think of anything better. So it was someone had an idea, no one had a better one, so there it was.
I'm a bit surprised we don't have the image here. Is it on this page somewhere?
It is, the patch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of a simple image, but it's very, very powerful, I think.
Yeah. So during the training for Apollo 11, here's where Slayton offered to get Collins back into the crew sequence after the flight. Collins would most likely have been the backup commander for 14 and followed by commander of 17. But he told Slayton he did not want to travel in space again if Apollo 11 was successful. The difficult schedule of an astronaut strained his family life. He wanted to help achieve John F. Kennedy's goal by landing on the moon within a decade and had no interest in further exploration of the moon once that goal was achieved.
Yeah, unlike Armstrong, who it was always about the program
and getting into space.
Yeah.
He always wanted to be in space.
Right, and his family suffered. His family life suffered because of it.
Yeah. And Cernan just basically, being very practical, just decided, nope, if we make the goal, that's it.
Collins.
Yeah, Collins.
Yeah. Okay.
So, an estimated 1 million spectators watched the Apollo 11 from the highways and beaches in the vicinity of the launch site.
1 million, wow.
The launch was televised to 33 countries, and my mom was 30 years old on that day. And I was 5.
I was a little older.
Almost 6, but I was 5. He wanted to achieve John F. Kennedy's goal by landing on the moon within the decade. I already read that. So propelled by a Saturn V rocket, yes.
Right.
Launch Complex 39A, the Kennedy Center. July 16, 1969.
That's when they launched.
Yep. Entered Earth orbit 12 minutes later. After 1.5 orbits, the SIVB third stage engine pushed the spacecraft into its trajectory toward the moon. About 30 minutes later, Collins performed the transposition, docking, and extraction maneuver, in which case he detaches from the third stage and docks with the lunar module and detaches the lunar module from the third stage and then continues on.
Okay, we got a comment. Cliff says, I have assigned 3 of them in the moon background picture. I think he's talking about the patch. Remember, he's a little behind
No,
us.
there's one of the pictures here. I'll show it.
Oh, hold on. Let me go back.
There we go. This picture here. One of these two. One of them has them holding their helmets. The other one does not.
Got it. Okay, that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Right, Cliff. Okay,
And
good. I'm glad you caught that.
So Cliff, is it the one with the helmets or without? I had a puzzle that was the one without the helmets.
And Janie says cool, and Shreyan, if you think about it, the best thing about the Cold War was the space race. Yeah.
Yep.
Major advances happened in space research and our understanding of the universe, and a lot of what they call spin-offs came from that. I mean, they miniaturized electronics, and I mean, just tons of, and we still get so much out of the space program.
Even the failed, and I'm going to put quotes on that, failed SDI project, Space Defense Initiative, gave us low-cost lasers and fiber optics and a lot of other things that we use today and just take for granted.
That's a whole story too. We found out at the library in your hometown.
Yep.
That was
Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell, who you might recognize as science fiction authors, were part of the 10-person team that thought up SDI. So the fact that they had science fiction authors on that project tells you something about the SDI initiative.
I don't think it's real well known.
It was never meant to succeed. It was meant to force the Soviet Union to expend $100,000 per missile to make them immune to the SDI initiative. And the Russians, being the Russians, did that. And that also helped spend them into oblivion. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that that Reagan is still chuckling about that. Because everyone thought it was a failure, but I think it was one of the final nails in the Soviet Union's coffin. Yeah. So, yay.
Very interesting stuff. Okay, you got more for us?
Lots. I'm not even halfway through this, but I think I'm getting.
I think your voice is halfway through.
Yeah.
Possibly more.
So let's go through. You can read about how Apollo 11 went, and there's a lot of movies and books about Apollo 11. In fact, we covered a bunch of them earlier. Mm-hmm. Became Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs, which he never really liked doing. Since he was neither a journalist nor a career diplomat, nor, unlike some of his predecessors, did he act as the department's spokesperson. Instead, he was head of the State Department's Bureau of Public Affairs. His role was that of managing relations with the public at large.
Well, his mom was probably happy about that part.
Yeah.
Diplomat, career diplomat.
Yeah.
He got a little piece.
He had a staff of 115 and a budget of $2.5 million. Wow. Which was small compared to the 6,000 public affairs staff of the United States Department of Defense. He was appointed to the position in December 15, 1969, after basically the same year that he got back.
Right.
He began work on January 6, 1970, and he took over during the Vietnam War. Well, when it was going badly, the invasion of Cambodia, Kent State shootings, protests, all of that. And he had no illusions about his ability to change minds, but attempted to engage the public all the same, playing on his Apollo 11 fame.
I didn't know anything about that stuff.
And here's interesting. He attributed part of the nation's problems to insularity. In 1970. Yeah.
Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Jeff, you're doing great. We appreciate your toughness.
Adrenaline helps a lot.
Yes.
I'm going to bed after this. Yeah. In a 1970 commencement speech in Vermont, St. Michael's College in Vermont, he told his audience that farmers speak to farmers, students to students, business leaders to other business leaders. But this intramural talk serves mainly to mirror one's beliefs, to reinforce existing prejudices, to lock out opposing views. So that's what he didn't like. So he realized he was not enjoying the job and secured President Nixon's permission to become the director of the National Air and Space Museum. His departure was officially announced February of 1971. So basically a year and a month he was in the position. So, basically I guess he went through a year and just
Good job.
And just was then out. But the Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs remained vacant until October of 1973 when Carol Leas took it over.
And we have a comment from Cliff. Told Highway Bob, take a hike. Yeah. Thanks, Cliff.
In August, here's the National Space Museum. This is what he became the director of. On August 12th, 1946, Congress passed an authorization bill for a National Air Museum.
Jeez, 46.
To be administered by the Smithsonian Institution and located on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Under the U.S. legislative system, authorization is insufficient. Congress also had to pass an appropriation bill allocating funding. Since this was not done, there's no money for the museum building. The 1957 Sputnik crisis and the resulting space race led to a surge of public interest in space exploration. The Freedom 7 and Freedom 7 Project Mercury spacecraft were donated to the Smithsonian, and 2.6 million visitors descended on the Arts and Industries building, where they were put on display in 1963. The museum was renamed the National Air and Space Museum in 1966, but there was still no funding to build it. Apollo 11 created another surge of interest in space. An exhibition of a moon rock attracted 200,000 visitors in 1 month.
Wow.
On May 19th, 1970, Senator Barry Goldwater, a retired U.S. Air Force Major General, gave an impassioned speech in the Senate for funding for a museum building.
So it sounds like they had space for it, but they didn't have the money to build it.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the space remained, like the real estate, the ground.
Right, because no one wanted to spend money to build anything there.
But it sounds like there's interest at this point.
Right, yeah.
All the different things. Okay.
In 1946, a few people got bragging rights for authorizing it. But, no one mentioned that, it was an empty paper.
Yeah. That's how a lot of things work. You can have it going, but if there's no money behind it, nothing happens.
Yeah. So his job had a clearly defined intangible goal, which I think Collins liked.
Yeah.
To obtain congressional funding and build the museum.
Yeah, work for going to the moon.
Yeah. Collins lobbied hard for the new museum. With the help of Goldwater in particular, Congress relented, and on August 10th, 1972, so almost a year and a half since he started. So it took a year and a half.
That's pretty good, though.
Yeah, they approved $13 million and contract authority for $27 million for its construction. The $40 million budget was lower than he had hoped for, and the building had to be scaled back and some economies made. In addition to cost pressure, there's also severe time pressure, as the museum was scheduled to open July 4th, 1976.
Oh, boy.
As part of the celebration of the upcoming United States bicentennial.
Oh, yeah, 76, right.
The design by architect Goyo Obata of the St. Louis firm Helmuth Obata and Kazabaumoff aimed to harmonize the new museum with the other ones in the National Mall. So the exteriors were faced with Tennessee marble to match the facade of the National Gallery of the Arts. Grisbane Building Company was awarded the construction contract. Everything was fast-tracked. Contracts were awarded as soon as each component of the design was complete. So foundation, yep, that's complete. Go build it. Outer walls, okay, that's complete. Go build it. This allowed the first contract to be awarded within 5 months of the start of design.
Wow, that's got to be some kind of record.
The design was completed in just 9 months. All contracts were awarded within a year of the start of the design.
Wow.
Ground was broken on the new museum November 20th, 1972. The building was built horizontally rather than vertically, as is the norm, so that work on the interiors could proceed concurrently.
Okay.
Basically, they finish one section, they start working on the interiors. Overseeing construction was but a part of Collins's task. He also had to hire museum staff, oversee the creation of exhibits, and launch the museum's Center for Earth and Planetary Studies, a new division devoted to research and analysis of lunar and planetary spacecraft data. Collins described the project as a monumental effort in which individual creativity combined with dedicated teamwork and just plain hard work. So he was given basically the everything of making this museum.
Jeez.
The museum was completed on budget and opened 3 days ahead of schedule on July 1st, 1976. President Gerald Ford presided over the formal opening ceremony. Over 1 million visitors passed through its doors in the first month, and it quickly established itself as one of the world's most popular museums, averaging between 8 and 9 million visitors per year over the next 2 decades.
Wow. So it sounds like it was worth it.
Yeah. Visitors entering saw Columbia in the Milestones Flight Hall, along with the Wright Flyer, the Spirit of St. Louis, and the glamorous Glennis. Collins held the directorship until 1978, when he stepped down to become the undersecretary of the Smithsonian Institution. During this time, although no longer an active duty Air Force officer, after he joined the State Department in 1970, he remained in the Air Force Reserve. He attained the rank of Major General in 1976 and retired in 1982. So, completed Harvard's Business School Advanced Management Program in 1974 after building the museum. And in 1980 became vice president of LTV Aerospace, Lewis and Vaut Corporation. I haven't heard of that one.
No,
I'm going to have to look that one up. Hang on. I'm going to take a look at that one later. He resigned in 1985 to start his own consulting firm, Michael Collins Associates, and wrote an autobiography in 1974 called Carrying the Fire, An Astronaut's Journey. New York Times writer John Wilford wrote that it is generally regarded as the best account of what it is like to be an astronaut.
Neat.
Yeah. So, Carrying the Fire, An Astronaut's Journey. Collins had also written Liftoff, the story of America's adventure in space in 1988.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
The history of America's space program, Mission to Mars in 1990, and a nonfiction book on human spaceflight to Mars, and Flying to the Moon and Other Strange Places in 1976. Revised and re-released as Flying to the Moon, An Astronaut's Story in 1994, a children's book on his experiences. I probably read the original. Although I was kind of beyond children's books, but I can't imagine that I didn't read that. Along with his writing, he had painted watercolors, mostly of the Florida Everglades, or aircraft he has flown. They are rarely space-related. He did not initially sign his paintings to avoid them increasing in price just because they had his autograph on them. So I guess he wanted just common people to be able to buy them. So he died in April 28th, 1921, of cancer.
2021.
Sorry, yeah, 2021.
It's okay.
So Buzz Aldrin became the last survivor of Apollo 11 and said that, quote, wherever Collins has been or will be, you will always have the fire to carry us deftly to new heights and to the future. So, honors and awards, lots of them. In popular culture, a lot of people played him in movies or miniseries. Rock groups recorded. Jethro Tull recorded the song For Michael Collins, Jeffrey and Me.
Oh, didn't know that.
Which appeared on the Benefit album in 1970. The song compares the feeling of misfitting from vocalist Ian Anderson and his friend Jeffrey Hammond with the astronaut's own, as he is left behind by the ones who had the great privilege of walking on the moon. But I don't know. I don't know if Collins actually felt that, but there's also a possibility that all of his being happy to be the one on the module was just basically making the best out of a situation, which he seemed to do. So, go ahead.
Cliff writes, I don't know if the new shuttle Endeavour display will be up so close and personal as I loved when I first saw her. Endeavour is the name of the ship to discover Australia. Very cool.
Oh, and Janie's down there.
Just showed up. Thanks. Thanks for another wonderful profile. I appreciate your dedication. Rest well and keep healing. Blessings to all.
Thanks, Janie.
Thank you.
Shit.
Shreyan, why always cancer? Collins lived till 90. Would have been better if he died peacefully in his sleep rather than cancer.
Well,
that's a hard one.
Out there in space, you've got a lot of radiation. I mean, and also when you think about it, in the early days where these guys were, when he smoked, he gave it up, but but it did damage. And two,
they didn't say how long he smoked for. So.
Right, yeah. Well, they said he was a heavy smoker, so.
Heavy smoker, yeah.
My guess would be that he smoked pretty well, and for a long time.
Anything else you want to let us know about there?
I think I'm done.
You're kind of done, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me go ahead and talk about the stellar events. We tend to tell you what's going to happen this week. That's August 4th through August 11th. August 4th is Neptune and the moon are in conjunction. You'll see one of those. On the 5th, the moon is on the equator. August 6th, the moon is in ascending node. August 7th is a civil holiday in Canada. And globe at night. The next project begins. That goes the 7th through the 16th. In the southern hemisphere, you're going to look for Sagittarius or Scorpius. They've given you a choice this time around. In the northern hemisphere, Cygnus and Hercules are the options. What you do is you go out, you get pictures, you share to the platform, and this is a really great way to participate. From what we've heard, it's very important work too. We got a couple comments.
Yeah.
We'll, you want to, okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
It's a rough night for you.
Yeah.
Get better, yeah.
Yeah, and also well wishes for Pam because she's just starting the journey that I'm almost over with.
So August 8th is the last quarter moon, and Jupiter and the moon are in conjunction, as well as Uranus and the moon are in conjunction. Apparently Uranus you can see with binoculars, so check it out. On the 9th, Mercury is at its greatest western elongation. You're going to look for this in the morning at 27 degrees above the horizon in the east before sunrise. August 11th.
There's a before sunrise?
Yeah. Yes, there is. I see it sometimes. August 11th, we're back to our Friday night show, and we're going to demonstrate a citizen science project. It's been a while, so stick around and find out more about that because it sounds pretty cool. Find us Fridays at 9 p.m. Pacific time on the Everyday Spacer Facebook page and the Everyday Spacer YouTube channel. I'm going to do this part because your voice is really done. If you or someone you know has done something interesting involving space exploration, science, astronomy, like that, we'd love to share our live. Join us again next Friday, August 11th for Backyard World's Cool Neighbors. It's a Zooniverse project to help scientists find brown dwarfs. You want to pull it up? Yeah. And I'll show it. And we got a comment here. What will the next session be about? Here it is. Let me show you the picture. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So you're going to help scientists find brown dwarfs, and they actually have little. Well, we'll show you. We'll show you next week.
Yeah, but fortunately, this one's only 56% completed, so
right.
It'll probably still be there next week.
Yes. I hope that's true.
There was one that we saw that looked also cool, but it was 98% done, and that was at the beginning of this week. So
yeah, by the time we got to the next show, it was done. I had that for 2 weeks. Oh. Yeah.
Sorry, Cliff.
Yeah. All right, so we started something last week, and I thought, let's see if people want to do this again. So it's a little bit of a trivia question. What was the original name for brown dwarfs? Yeah. Join us again next week, and we'll see if you got that answer right.
Yeah, and just so you know, there's a lot of crunchy stuff about brown dwarfs in this. So.
Yay. And I'm thinking I want to do a crunchy topic about artificial intelligence someday. So,
Yep.
Yeah, we got some good stuff. Oh, thanks, Don.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
Great show. Learned a lot about Collins. Yeah, we did too.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I didn't realize he was part of the Air and Space Museum.
Yeah.
And we're all better off for it. I mean, what a legacy.
Yeah. I mean, just the things that he's done other than just being one of the 3 people to get us to the moon. He also basically developed the Air and Space Museum, National Air and Space Museum.
Yeah.
But I've always been a fan of Collins simply because no one talks about him.
Yeah. Well, and I know the one picture, it's like, picture of the moon and the Earth and the, you got it up there, don't you?
Oh.
The module that's heading for the moon.
Oh,
and the comment is, in this picture is everyone but Michael Collins.
Yeah, here it is.
You got it?
Yeah.
All right, let me share it. Yeah, right here.
In this picture is everyone
every
but
living
Michael.
being but himself.
Yeah, at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, every living being that is and ever has been.
Oh, yes, right.
That was the actual quote.
I see. That sounds like
it sounds a lot
Carl
like
Sagan.
Carl Sagan, but I don't know if he's the one who said that.
We got a comment from Cliff too. Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, he's talking about the brown dwarf one, I think.
Oh, the question?
Oh.
Well, if you like trivia questions, we can do that. I don't mind. I usually suck at trivia, but
Well, we're doing the research, so we're going to do really well at it.
All right. Anything from you?
Nope.
Anything else from you? We will watch for comments later as well.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, folks. We really appreciate you being here.
Good night.
That's Cliff and Dawn and Shreyan and Scott.
And Janie.
Janie. Let's see. Did we get everybody?
I think so.
I think we did. Scott. Yeah. Thanks so much for being here, everybody.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts of the show.
Yeah.
Have a great week, folks. We'll see you next Friday.
Yep. Good night, guys.